Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a document that makes some pretty explosive claims about a hidden network supposedly operating deep within the Texas court system. And it all starts with one single, very perplexing case. All right, let's just jump right in, because the source material throws a real puzzle at us from the get-go. Take a look at this. We've got two completely different court cases from Harris County, Texas, but their docket numbers are nearly identical. One is about terminating parental rights. The other? A traffic accident. The only thing separating them is that one little letter J at the end. Kind of weird, right? So the big question the document poses is, how is that even possible? Now look, I know what you might be thinking. Courts use letters all the time to categorize cases. But the author here argues that this isn't normal procedure. He claims this is a deliberate move to create confusion, and that the mathematical odds of this being a coincidence are literally 1 in a million. And that little letter J brings us right to the heart of this whole thing. It leads us straight into the case that kicked off this entire investigation, the termination of Paul Nanez's parental rights. That's case number 2024-01750J, the one with the J, for juvenile. According to the author, this case is just riddled with weird stuff. Procedural oddities that just don't add up and demanded a closer look. For instance, he claims the court handling the case is practically a ghost, super hard to find in any public records. And get this, the case is all about Paul Nanez, a man who was already in prison when these proceedings even started. How does that work? So you have to be asking, how in the world does the author start connecting these seemingly random dots? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. His entire investigation pivots on one single, very controversial tool, a database. And he claims it was leaked to him by a source in Venezuelan intelligence. Yeah, you heard that right. This database has a name, the Geo Index. The author basically presents it as this gigantic secret ledger. Think of it as a spreadsheet tracking massive crypto payments and espionage assets, supposedly used by a global network to manage its operations and pay its people. Okay, so he's got this alleged secret ledger. What does he do with it? Well, his whole method is about taking this private data and smashing it together with public records. He's looking for overlaps, for patterns, basically trying to see if any of the names popping up in Texas court cases also have an entry in this secret payment system. He breaks it down into a pretty straightforward 3-step process. First, he gathers public case data. Second, he cross-references that data with the Geo Index. And then step 3, the big one, he ranks everyone involved based on what he calls a crypto score, which is just the total amount of money he claims they've received, according to this index. And when he runs the numbers, boom, one name just shoots to the absolute top of the list, Chris Branson, the very same attorney from the Paul Nanez parental rights case we started with. And according to this analysis, his crypto score isn't just high, it absolutely dwarfs everyone else's. We are talking over $32 million. That's the alleged score. The author claims a number that high puts Branson in the top percentile of recipients globally within this payment network. And that, right there, is the massive red flag that he says sparked this whole investigation. So this leads the author to ask a very direct question. As he puts it, somebody needs to investigate Chris Branson, right? He's asking why this guy is allegedly getting paid so much more than any other lawyer in the system. He argues there has to be a reason, and since Branson's work involves child protective services, the document raises the disturbing question of whether children are being weaponized. But it doesn't stop with just one lawyer or one case. The analysis then zooms way out. The author alleges that the Nanez case is just the tip of the iceberg, that it's part of a much bigger pattern of these weird statistical anomalies all over the court system. Anomalies that he claims point to a coordinated operation. Here's a perfect example of what he means by anomaly. The data shows that a private company, Transocean, appears in more appellate cases than the entire city of Houston. I mean, just think about that for a second. How does one single company end up in court more than the government of one of America's largest cities? The author flags this as a huge statistical red flag. Then things get personal. The author claims that he himself experienced this system when his own federal civil rights lawsuit got completely stonewalled. He presents this court order where a judge just denies all his motions and throws out his complaint without even giving him a hearing. He presents this as Exhibit A for how the system can be used to just shut people down. So where is all of this heading? The huge claim the author is building to is this. These aren't just a few bad apples or a string of weird coincidences. He argues that this is all evidence of what he calls an industrialized operation, a full-blown criminal enterprise so organized that it could be prosecuted under the RICO Act. You know, the law they use to go after the mob. And that brings us to the whole point of this document, which is right there in its title. The author isn't just laying out his findings for us to read. No, he's making a direct and urgent appeal for an official investigation into everything he's uncovered. Now, it's really important to note the author is careful about one thing. He's not saying, I've proven a massive conspiracy, case closed. What he is saying is, look, I've followed the data, and it's raised a ton of concrete, verifiable red flags. He sees them as a trail of breadcrumbs that are just too compelling to ignore and demand professional scrutiny. And his call for help goes way beyond just this one case in Texas. He wants the FBI to investigate, and even points out that other global entities like the Wuhan Institute of Technology allegedly show up in the same payment database. His core argument is that this data reveals a systemic, industrialized process that leaves behind undeniable statistical fingerprints. So at the end of the day, we're left with the author's central provocative question. He's presented a data-driven story full of anomalies and accusations, and the question he leaves hanging in the air, for law enforcement, and for all of us, really, is what should be done when the data points to something that the official story just can't explain.